Hey everyone, this video is going to be about 5 specific game mechanics. This is mainly targeted at people who are newer to board gaming, perhaps parents whose kids would like to get different games on the table that they see at a friend's house or maybe in the store, on the shelf, or online, and people who are unfamiliar with mechanics other than just roll and move a character or something of that nature will get a little bit from this video because I'm going to go into some more typical game mechanics that are found in more of the more popular games these days. There are a huge variety, or there is a huge variety of mechanics out there. I'm going to go into 5 of the most popular. I'm going to go into deck building, worker placement, dice rolling, tile placement, and drafting. And I'm going to use specific games to demonstrate each mechanic. Now, some games will have more than one, which you'll see once I get into it. And that's okay, because once you understand one aspect, one mechanic, then you'll be able to apply that to that game, and it'll make learning newer mechanics, if that game has other things that you don't really know or aren't really familiar with, it'll make that a little bit easier. So I'll start things off and let's just get this going. Okay, so the first mechanic that we're going to look at is deck building. We're going to use a game called Dominion. It's a very common deck building game. And the way the game begins is everyone is given their own deck of cards to start out with. You shuffle your deck up, which I've already done. You draw your initial cards. And then on your turn, you can play cards from your hand to do certain actions. So some cards will let you buy new cards. Some cards will give you money. Some cards will let you draw cards. In this case, I drew 3 money cards and 2 point cards. So the point cards aren't really going to do anything for me right now. So I'm just going to hold on to them. But I'm going to play my money cards. So my money cards give me 7 money, 3, 3, and 1, so that I can buy cards. Now there are going to be common cards out there in stacks, such as these 2. I only put 2 out just for demonstrative purposes. And they'll have costs on them. Depending on what game you play will depend on what the costs are. In this case, they just use regular money. So in here, in the corner, there's the cost of the card. Market costs 5. Militia costs 4. So I can decide which card I want to buy. So I believe I'll buy the market card. I'll draw that card. Place it in my discard pile. Now these are done. They get discarded. Can't do anything with these. These get discarded. And then I draw a new hand. Now, another big part of deck building games is that there are cards in here that will let you permanently discard other cards. So when you start out with little 1-point cards. You start out with coppers, which are only 1 money. But as you buy more cards and you get better cards, you want to play those cards, but you need to be able to draw them. So to make it more likely that you're going to draw these cards, you want to basically sack other cards or permanently discard them. So you play a card that let you permanently discard a card, and you discard it permanently. That card is no longer in your deck. When your draw deck runs out, you take your discard deck, you shuffle it up, and that becomes your draw deck again. So you can see as you buy cards and put them in your discard pile, then you shuffle them up, they go back in your deck, and now you're going to be able to draw those cards and play them. So as the game goes on, your deck will grow in size. This is what they mean when they say this is a deck building game. Eventually, the game will end. You will go through your deck, count up your points, and then determine who the winner is. But for the most part, this is what the mechanic is for deck building. You're building up a deck to help you to help you play better cards so that you can get more points and even better cards and try and defeat your opponents. Okay, so now we're going to look at worker placement games. The game that we're using to demonstrate this is called Stone Age. This game is pretty much pure worker placement, and the idea is that you get a set amount of workers. They're usually shaped like what is called meeples, which is little people-looking guys. And what you're going to do is everybody will alternate being able to place workers. Let's clean this up a little bit. And you're going to use your meeples to do certain actions depending on where you place them on the board. So you have all these little circles. These circles on this game are where you place your people or meeples in order to perform actions. So if I place, say, a person here, it does a specific action. So let's say I'll place someone here. Placing someone here means that if I pay the cost, I get to take this tile. If I place people up here, that means I get wood. If I place, which in this game is a resource, these are all resources. If I place someone here, I can get brick. Here I can get stone. Here I can get gold. Here I can take one of these cards. Now I'm not going to go into the specifics of what everything in this particular game does, but this is the basic idea of worker placement, is you're using your people or meeples to perform specific actions. So let's say I put someone here, I could take a tool. A tool helps me in other sections of the game. If I put my people here to get resources, I can use those resources to purchase cards, or perhaps I can use those resources to purchase huts. So depending on where you put your workers will depend on what you can do in the game. And that is the basic crux of worker placement games, is you're using your workers to perform certain actions. Now some games will take this a step further, such as a game called Roll for the Galaxy, where you roll dice first that are special, and depending on what face the dice are, those dice will then become workers for specific tasks based on what the die says. So there is more to worker placement. It can be used with other mechanics. It can be expanded upon, but the basic idea of a worker placement game is just that you're using your workers to perform tasks so that you can either obtain resources, obtain cards that will help you, obtain things that will give you points, or things that maybe will just help you with die rolls in other areas of the game. But for the most part, this is just the basics of worker placement. Using your people, using your workers to perform specific tasks depending on where you put them on the board. That's pretty much the gist of that. Okay, so next on the list is dice rolling. Dice rolling is where rolling dice is what determines what your actions are for your turn, for the most part. Some games such as this one, which is King of Tokyo, will have other things that can give you actions, such as the cards that you can purchase. But for the most part, what you're going to do is determined by your dice. Everybody shares the dice, so on your turn, let's say I'm Gigasaur here, big wicked looking lizard dude, and I roll my dice, see what I get. All right, so each side of the die does different things. Numbers will give you that many points if you can get 3 of a kind. The lightning symbol will give you lightning bucks, which is money. The paw print will give you smashes, which hurt your opponents. And hearts will let you heal. Although for right now, Gigasaur is in Tokyo, so he can't heal. Most of these games have reroll mechanics. So in this game, you can reroll any dice up to 2 rerolls. So I rolled once. I can keep what I want to keep and roll again. So I'll keep these, try to get my third 3. All right, so now I have 2 money. And I think I'm going to re-roll one more time with just this die, try and get that third 3. And I didn't get it. So now on my turn, these 3s will do nothing. These 2 lightning bolts will get me 2 lightning bucks. And the 2 smashes will do 2 damage to my opponent, which in this case is Alienoid. He's probably not going to be happy that I just did that. That's basically it. Instead of placing workers or playing cards to do specific actions, in this case, your actions are determined by your die rolls. So that would be considered a die rolling mechanic. Okay, so next up is tile placement. The game I'm using for this is called Carcassonne. It's a very, very popular tile placement game. And the way this mechanic works is you'll usually have a stack of tiles that will be communal, so everyone will share them. And on a player's turn, they will draw a tile, turn it over, and then they will place it somewhere on the board connected to the existing tiles, which is referred to usually as the tableau. And in this game, they include a bit of worker placement. So when you place a tile, you may place a worker to try and score points. So this is what I meant before about some games will mix different mechanics. So this one, I'll say I'll put a worker right here on the road. And then my opponent will go. My opponent will draw part of a city. So maybe they place it here. And then they place their worker in the city. So the game will progress where every time somebody draws a card, they place. Every time a tile, they will place it. And play will continue until all the tiles have been placed. Most games like this have restrictions depending on how you can legally place a tile, such as in this game, I can't place this tile here because the road would go pretty much nowhere. I can't place it here because the road goes to nowhere and the city goes to nowhere. So maybe I'll place this one here. And you keep going till you run out of tiles, and then the game will end and you'll do scoring. For this particular game, people score for cities, roads, monasteries, things of that nature. But the general idea is you're placing tiles, adding to a tableau in order to perform actions or specific tasks, and you can execute those actions in this game with worker placement. So that's how the two would interact with each other. Okay, so the last mechanic we're going to go into is going to be drafting. In this case, I'm going to be drafting tiles for a mosaic. This game is called Azul, a very popular drafting game. And there are different types of drafting. In this case, we're going to do tiles. There are some drafting games that have cards. So let's say I'll get a handful of cards, just like everyone else at the table, and I'll draft one card out of that hand, play it in front of me, and then we all pass our hands to the left. I take my new hand, I draft a card, play it in front of me, and then keep going. That would be a card drafting game. In this case, we're going to be drafting tiles to build mosaics. Our mosaics will be here. This will be, in this case, a two-player game. This isn't the exact amount of factory floors, which is what these discs are called for this. I'm just doing this to demonstrate. So in this game, what you would do is you would draft tiles that are alike from either one of the factory floors, these discs, or from the street, which is in the middle. And you're trying to build out your mosaic here. So let's say I'll draft from this one. I'm going to take these two tiles that are alike. I will place them on my board. So let's say I'll place them here. And the other ones will go to the street. Now the next player will do the same. Let's say they draft these two blues. They place them here. And now they're going to move these tiles to the street. And so on and so forth. So play will continue to go. So let's say I'll draft this one. These go to the street. Now let's say this player 2 here wants to draft these. Well, in this game, first person to take from the middle gets the 1-player token, which goes in the bottom and loses them a point. But they don't mind right now because they're able to get these 3 and fill this row. So this will keep going. This player will, say, draft this tile. Maybe 6 it down there, puts these in the middle. This player is going to draft this tile to put it up top. We'll go 2 blues here, 2 reds here, and 2 here. So we each take turns drafting. At the end of the round, we'll move things over and score points. But that's the basic idea, is you're drafting from a centralized area in order to fill your board, or to play cards to play points, or to perform actions. It's all about how you perform actions. Worker placements, you place workers. Dice rolling, you roll dice. In this case, you're drafting. You're pulling tokens or cards or items from a specific area in order to perform actions or better your position in a game. That's the basic idea behind a drafting mechanic. Okay, so those are the 5 mechanics that I wanted to show you guys today. I hope that was very informative. I hope you guys are walking away from this feeling like you at least have a general grasp of how these mechanics work. Like I said, you're going to see these a lot in popular games. Sometimes they'll be mix and match. Sometimes there'll be a game that has dice rolling and worker placement, such as Roll for the Galaxy. Sometimes there'll be games that are more dedicated to specific mechanics, such as Stone Age, which is mainly worker placement. But overall, once you grasp the mechanics behind them, you'll be able to look at specific games and say, oh, okay, this has this mechanic. I think I understand that. I think I get how that mechanic works. And as you look through games that you might be interested in, perhaps you can go on Board Game Geek. If you are unsure when looking at the box, I don't really know what kind of mechanic goes with this game, go on Board Game Geek, search the game, see what it's all about. They will list the mechanics that game uses rather. And you can look through those. If you click on the mechanic itself, it'll show you a whole list of games that use that mechanic. So you can go to games that you know that use mechanics you're familiar with and just click on there, and it will lead you to more games that are similar or at least use the same mechanics, so that you're not going in feeling like, I don't know what's happening here, I'm so confused, this is very odd. I will say that some games do better jobs than others in using these mechanics or describing rules, but for the most part, the idea, the core concepts, the ideas behind them will remain the same. So good luck, have fun, and I hope to see you next time.